Welcome back to the Wingspan Podcast, episode 13. I'm Doug Barak, joined by my co-host Chris Mulholland of Nets Daily, and our special guest. Our guest was the 1973 ABA Rookie of the Year, two-time ABA All-Star, and two-time ABA champion with the New York Nets. He played 10 seasons professionally, splitting time between the ABA and NBA.
We welcome Brian Taylor to the pod. Thank you for taking some time out of your day, Brian, to join Doug and I. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to talk to you on a wonderful Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's beautiful out by us.
It's beautiful out. It's beautiful out. So I guess we'll kick it off first with dating back to your high school days. So out of high school, you drew some interest from many colleges and university to play ball. Specifically, nearly every top 20 college in the nation wanted you. So why did you choose Princeton out of all the choices that you had to start the next chapter of your life?
Yes, the great why Princeton. I've heard that question quite a bit in my lifetime. And it's a very, very clear reason why. And of course, it comes down to education. It's very interesting that I had a great high school counselor who wanted me to get the best possible education. So he gave me articles from Sports Illustrated. I can remember probably my sophomore year in high school. And they were titled The Black Athlete, A Shameful Story. And I can remember the author as well. Those articles were great. Jack Olson, a great writer. And then it produced a book. And in that book, it really talked about the problems that a lot of great athletes were facing when they were going to college. And that was that they were not finishing college and they were just being exploited for their athletic ability and never getting the opportunity to get the degrees and get a great education. So I didn't want to become a shameful story. And so education became one of my most important goals back in my high school days.
Yeah, that's a smart answer because especially back in that day, professional basketball was still developing, and obviously coming out of college, the security and the kind of the stability of the ABA and the NBA was kind of still in the air at that time. So I could see why education was more valued over the basketball play at that certain time.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking too much about professional sports at that time. I was just hoping that I could get a free education. I come from a poor family and a low-income family, and I wanted to be able to get a college education, and I knew we weren't going to be able to afford to pay for it, so I knew I had to get something athletically and not really thinking too much about being a professional in my high school days. I dreamt about maybe being a professional, not sure what sport, but I just valued education in the school I came from, having great counselors who always impressed upon me the importance of getting a great education.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. I exactly see where you're coming from. And then kind of transition a little bit. You were the first Princeton Tiger and one of the first college players really to leave for the pros early, kind of 3 years into college. Following your time at Princeton, can you just talk a little about the transition from college ball to the ABA league and kind of what was that like?
The transition for me was not a difficult transition. At first, it was expected for me to not really play much as a rookie coming in, especially with the Nets. They had great guards. John Roach, I'm sure you guys remember the great John Roach, All-American from South Carolina.
Yep.
And the All-Star Bill Malchione, his number I think is in the Nets arena. And so there were two really great guards. And so I started out coming off the bench with great coach Lou Carnesecca, and just watching them, observing everything, and just staying attentive and taking care of my body, making sure I got enough rest so that when I got the opportunity to play, that I could impress. And that's what happened. John Roach got hurt early in the year, and I got a chance to start, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay.
So the game was not too much of a transition for me because playing in high school, we played run and gun. You get the ball up the court and shoot. It's like they play nowadays, right? Only thing is that we weren't getting 3 points for the long distance guns, the shots I was taking. But that's the way we played in high school. And then also people have a misconception of Princeton basketball at least during my era, that we averaged close to 80 points. Everyone thought that Princeton style was to slow the ball down, and with coach with my group of players, he wanted us to get the ball up the court and run and play tough defense to get stuff off the steals. And so I was prepared for the pro game. I think it fit my style of play very, very well. So the style wasn't too much of a transition for me to make, but probably the number of games is more difficult than anything else. And so, of course, during those days in the ABA, just to get to Virginia, you're going to take 2 or 3 stops. So the travel and making sure that you got your rest was probably the greatest challenge you had as a professional.
That's cool. And at Princeton, did you get any advice from Bill Bradley when you were there? Obviously, it was a little earlier.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Bill was one of the reasons I chose to go to Princeton. I was really, really impressed with his college career and followed him quite a bit as a youngster. And so I became real good friends with Bill. Bill used to train me down at Lawrenceville Prep. I can still remember a couple of the key things he taught me. And so when I was trying to make a decision as to whether to stay in school or to leave school, Bill had my ear, and of course I had his ear, and he was involved with the Players Association. I think he was on the executive committee, so he had learned that there was potential merger coming up in the very near future when I was in school. So he was advising me the difference of the economic impact it would have if there was a merger before I left school. So his advice to me was to stay tuned to what was happening and take advantage of the opportunity to make more money rather than less if there was a merger. So yeah, I listened to Bill, and big fan of his.
That's good. That's great.
So can you talk about your experience with the New York Nets and what it was like winning 2 ABA championships?
Well, before we won, our rookie year was a tough year because we were not a great team. We were a relatively young team. We had a All-American center who came in with me as a rookie. He was the first pick. He was the Nets' first pick. This is my buddy Jim, the great Jim Chones, and I. So we had two rookies that were, for the most part of the season, were in the starting lineup. And yeah, George Carter just became the star of the team. I think he came in from Virginia. And we really weren't that great of a team. So it was a challenge my rookie year with the wins and the losses weren't what I expected, but it was a learning experience for me. So it was a very, very interesting story that I tell people is that I had a great rookie year.
Yeah, you won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I think people don't realize it, but I think I'm still in the record books for the shooting percentage as a rookie. I think I shot close to 53%. And so I had a good shooting year, and I played really good defense. And so I knew I had made an impact my rookie year, but there was whispers and talks about the Nets getting Julius Erving, and I became very, very nervous. I didn't have a no-trade contract, so I figured that if they were going to get Dr. J, they were going to have to give up, a player that had a good year the previous year, and I was one of those guys, so I was worried about getting traded all summer.
Oh, damn.
And I was the happiest guy in the world when we got Dr. J, and I was still on the roster. So my second year, which is Doc's first year, Doc and I's first year together, is the first championship year. It was a very interesting year because we also had so many great players on that team. The great Bill Paul, what we call him the Whopper, that's Billy Pauls, and then you still had Malchione as the playmaking guard. And then we had 2 fantastic rookies that came in that year. Of course, everyone knows the late, great Super John Williamson. And at the time, they used to call him Dr. K, but he hated being called Dr. K because we had Dr. J. So he changed his nickname to Mr. K. And those 2 came out when they got the opportunity their rookie year. they gave us so much depth and talent and scoring ability and this exciting play that we really struggled very early on in the season until they became steady starters for it. I think we might have lost close to 10 straight games that the first year we were together. Doc was traded and the new rookies came in. We lost 10 straight games at the beginning of the year. Kevin Lockery and Rod Thorne called a meeting in San Diego. I can remember like it was yesterday, and one by one just blasted all of our play. And he made a crucial decision to put Super John in the starting lineup, and we changed our style of play. But Super John became a starter, and the next game we won the game, and then I think the rest was pretty much history. We became a great, great team that year with Billy Pauls in the center and Larry Keenan and Dr. J up front and Super John and myself in the backcourt. Bill Malchione came off the bench, and because I had played very well most of the end of my rookie year, that they traded the great playing John Roach to Kentucky. So I had a chance to become the starter, and they believed that I could be a great playmaker. So that second year, once we got it together, people still talk about that team to this day. We were one exciting team. And for me, being able to run the fast break and having Super John trailing and Doc on one corner and Mr. K in the other corner, and man, that was an exciting team. Great team to play with.
No doubt, no doubt. So you won 2 ABA championships. Were you confident that you were going to repeat after the first one?
Very confident. Coming back trying to repeat. We thought we had the team to repeat. And we were on track to compete. Kentucky was really fantastic that year with Dan Issel and Louis Dampier and Artis Gilmer. They were formidable that year. But we had a little dissension at the end of the year. And the thing about basketball is that with all those great players, it's just how are you willing to sacrifice your whole game, and especially offensively. So I think at the end of that year that we had a little dissension as to sharing the ball and accepting roles. And we went downhill. We lost a playoff game. Actually, it became, I think, Kentucky, if I can remember clearly, we had the same record as Kentucky going into the playoffs, and we had to see who won the Eastern Division, and we had a one-game playoff down in Kentucky, which we lost. And I think after that loss, we went downhill, and we wind up playing the Spirits of St. Louis, who we had beaten 11 straight times that year. It became so boring. Same team, 11 times beat them. And because we were not playing as a team, we won the first game against the Spirits of St. Louis. And then after that, they swept us. I think they did a show on 30-30. I think they have a show about how exciting it was for St. Louis to beat us in the playoffs, the great net team, to lose to a team they beat 11 straight times in the regular season. They made a show out of it with the great Marvin Barnes. And, of course, Freddie Lewis is still to this day doesn't get his due for his great basketball ability. And so there were changes to be made after us not repeating. And so the big trade was made to where we got Rich Jones, and we picked up Tim Bassett, and we traded off Larry Keenan, and Billy Pauls were traded to Kentucky. Actually San Antonio. Excuse me for that mistake. They were traded to San Antonio, and we got a couple of role players, the guys who were willing to play the roles, and we were off and running the final year of the ABA with a renewed mission of winning another championship with players who were willing to accept their roles. And so that became a great year for us. I mean, we were very dominant that year as well.
That's good. And then, Brian, one thing that we talked about in the past was kind of your play style, that being known as a shooter kind of with the Nets. And then I remember we talked about, you're like, no, I was more than a shooter with the Nets. Can you talk about kind of your play style and like being known as kind of that sharp shooter on the Nets? But when we talked that time, you're like, well, I was a driver. I was kind of more than just a shooter.
Yeah, my game was speed. And people will tell you that I can get up and down the court very quickly. So I wanted to, I was a pass first. No, I couldn't say that in high school. They called me a gunner in high school. I mean, I scored 84 points in a game, so I had that reputation as a gunner. I wanted to shoot, but I was getting up and down the court, taking advantage of the fast break, penetrating and dish. I would love to play the fast break game. And of course, like I talked about playing with Dr. J and Mr. K, being able to penetrate and find these guys on the wings for their fantastic dunks and being able to distribute the ball to Super John Williamson and go in the low post to the Whopper and move off of that. Knowing how to play in a system as well, which I was taught at Princeton with the great Pete Carrill, Coach Carrill, really taught me how to play the game in the structured style versus the run and gun style that I had learned in high school. And then defense. Of course, I always took pride in defense. I think that was the reason I was able to play 10 years in the league, because even if I wasn't scoring, I was going to be valuable to a team by playing lockdown defense and being able to be a playmaker. And so I take a lot of pride in being an all-around player, a guy that made the all-defensive team and also led the league in three-point shooting percentage. And so I think that my legacy, I would like my legacy to be known as somebody who played both ends of the court and had a good, great attitude on team basketball, which I was taught at Princeton.
Yeah, so speaking of team basketball, and you've mentioned their names several times, but I'd love you to do maybe a little more of a deep dive of playing with guys like Super John, Bill Melchione, Special K as another one of his many nicknames, as I found out, and the Dr. J. So can you talk about what it was like playing with all these individual greats?
Well, playing with Bill Melchione, I'll start with him first. Real heady guard, great playmaker, great distributor of the basketball, and very good as a mid-range jump shooter. So I learned a lot how to run a team from Bill Malchione, just listening and watching him play, and then him giving the handle to me to be the team leader from the backcourt. Playing with Super John. Super John is an amazing offensive weapon. He wanted the ball. I tell people a story, they get a kick out of it, is that, of course, you got Dr. J, so Dr. J is going to be your go-to guy, right? And, of course, I made a living off of him because I'd get the ball to Dr. J. My guy would always go and double team him, and Doc was such an unselfish player that he would always spot me the ball. And it became easy for me to catch and shoot. I think that's how I led the league in three-point shooting on the last year of the ABA in 1976, just knowing how to move with the Doc. And so Doc is our go-to guy, and one day, and Super John and I are very, very good friends. Soup calls me, and he says, BT, can I talk to you? I said, sure, Soup, we can talk always. So he pulled me aside, and he says, BT, you know I'm a black belt. I said, yeah, I know, Soup, I know you're a black belt. And he says, well, Doc's not the only one on this team that gets the ball, so pass me the goddamn ball. I said, okay, Soup, I'll make sure that happens. And then also having Mr. K on the other wing, any of these guys could have been your go-to guy all the time offensively, unless they were great scorers. I mean, Larry Keenan on the wings and in the low posts had such quickness and great moves, and he had unbelievable jumping tack on the offensive board. So he was able to, even though other guys are shooting, he was able to get his scoring points by grabbing those unbelievable one-hand rebounds and putting them back up. So playing with Larry was a joy too. But you think about it, there's only one basketball, and you got the great Super John, whose jersey is hanging in the rafters at the Barclays Center. And you got, of course, all-time great Dr. J on the other wing, and you got Keenan in that year. First year we won the championship, you got the Whopper in the middle, the post guy who was a great offensive player. So playing with all these guys, and then we had a great bench coming off the bench was Al Skinner, his long lefty. And we brought in Ted McClain, and then also we had Mike Gale, another solid guard. And then it was a great joy playing with the late Wendell Ladner. And I miss my buddy. We lost him in a plane crash. And so we became a team more of a team where everyone accepted their role during our second championship. During our first championship, we were just loaded. We had so much offensive ability and exciting team highlights that was the easy one, but it became difficult when we realized that people had to accept their roles and play together in order for us to win. And I thought our second championship, we were more of a team that had accepted their roles.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, jokingly, I could say you guys were like the modern day Warriors before Katie left with all that talent and that lobbing. I mean, it's a mix, a hybrid of those Warriors and Lob City, I guess. It's one way of, fun exaggeration, let's call it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of talent. I mean, our first championship, just think about it. If you add up the number of years of that's just the starting 5 plus maybe a couple guys off the bench, you get humongous years. I mean, who would believe that the Whopper, Billy Pauls, wind up playing longer than most everybody except for Dr. J. Super John had a long career. Larry Kennan is all-time great. I guess I was the weakest one out of that 5.
Oh, can't be that hard on yourself, man. But anyways, talking about doctors, since his birthday was just the other day, so happy birthday to Dr. J. Got any fun stories that many might not know or may know, but unfortunately gets lost in the history of things?
Well, I think for Dr. J, he's like my big brother. Doc's like, BT, you living in an apartment. In my rookie year, I had an apartment in Hempstead. He's like, you got to get out of the apartment and make an investment. So he had a condo down at Lido Beach, a beautiful condo right on the beach. He says, be smart. Take your money and invest in one of the condos. So I wound up becoming his neighbor, took his advice. Like I think I could remember how much I paid for it. It was like $28,000 for this beautiful 1-bedroom apartment. Right? I wish I still had it to this day, but I was never there, so I wound up selling it. We had great parties there. We had a great party there with Doc, and Marvin Gaye came to visit. He was an associate of mine with a nonprofit, and so he would come to Lido Beach and hang out with us every now and then. But so for Doc, for me, it's more memories of him off the court and his guidance and his leadership and just his friendship. On the court, he was just so steady emotionally. What stands out for me with Doc is that he never yelled at his teammates. He never got flustered with us. He would just encourage. His encouragement of his teammates was incredible. And then more than anything, he was a team player. I mean, he never griped that I took more shots than him or Super John took more shots than him. He was all about winning. And so for me, this his humanitarian way of being is what stands out for Dr. J with me. And this his great personality and his loving personality. And this, wherever we went, this guy had so many fans that it was amazing just to see. And to this day, Doc did an appearance for me when I was executive director at a school in Phoenix, and people were chasing after him as he's leaving in his limousine. I mean, his lure, his magnetism is just incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but soon they're gonna have a bobblehead night for him where he'll be kind of a hybrid between the Black Panther and Dr. J. So
only Black Panther because he had his fro was so
yeah
that they thought he was really a revolutionary. Right?
Yeah, I mean, regardless off the court, on the court, he was a revolutionary player, like the way he dominated the game and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you can find a way to come into that game. And
what you guys got to send me the date on that. As a matter of fact, the last time I was there, I surprised them. That's when they and it was he had such a great compliment to me that night. I surprised him when I showed up when they lifted up his number in the rafters.
Amazing.
And I stepped up on the court and Doc, BT, what are you doing here? What are you doing? He gave me a big hug and he looked up there. And he says, BT, yours should be right next to me. And to this day, I'm like, I don't even care if it doesn't happen. If Doc says it should happen, I mean, that's good enough for me.
That in itself deserves going on a plaque. Like that's like legendary. But yeah, actually, it's coming up real soon. To be honest, Friday, March 6th versus the San Antonio Spurs. So if the calendar allows it, let's make some prizes happen, man. Right?
Yeah, I wish I could do that. I'm coming that way. I'm coming east. Just to let you guys know, a little breaking news. I'm coming east the following weekend up to Harvard. I'm going into the Ivy League Hall of Fame.
Oh wow,
Oh, wow.
that's
Congratulations.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to be back east for that weekend from the 12th to probably to the 17th. I'm scheduled to do a couple of appearances back on the East
Mazel
Coast.
tov, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really exciting. It's the Ivy League. I mean,
Yeah, you can't get much higher than that. That's pretty good.
I was a lucky guy to get there, to be at a place like Princeton, but I took full advantage of it. And the smartest thing I did is after I tore my Achilles after 10 years as a professional basketball player, I went back to Princeton and got my degree in 1984 when I'm the original class of 73. And that was probably the smartest thing I did.
That's great. That's great. And then I got to talk a little about kind of the transition. It's kind of can you just talk a little about the transitions and if there was any challenges from kind of going from the ABA to the NBA?
Yes, they had to get used to all this new talent coming into NBA. You know what's so interesting about the transition is that people really thought that we were second-class basketball players because we were ABA players. And the truth of the matter is that we changed the game. We brought so much magnetism and athleticism and style to the NBA. The NBA game was more of a half-court game where you ran sets. You had to make 3 or 4 passes, or you had to pick and today's game is more pick and roll, but back then you had to do so many different motions off of a set in order to play. And so for me, the transition was difficult because the game had slowed down. And my first year in the NBA, I played for a coach who was very, very methodical. And that was a transition for me. We couldn't just run on everything. We could run off a steal or something like that. But of course, in playing in the ABA, we were running off everything. We were running off made baskets. We were running off, of course, steals. We're running off everything. But coming into the NBA, the game was much slower. And so for me, the transition is now I got to run through these basketball sets, know how to run through the basketball sets more frequently than when I was playing in the ABA, where I get the ball to Doc on the wing. Doc's going to do his ISO and do that thing, and we're running and breaking. Had the freedom to penetrate whenever I wanted to. If I did that with Phil Johnson as my coach with the Kings, I would hear about it. So it was more disciplined. It was a slower game, more physical than the ABA game. I mean, we were using our speed, so it wasn't that physical playing the fast break game in the ABA, but in the NBA, because there's more half court basketball, there was a lot more physicality. And so for me, the transition was just accepting the game as a slower game, but then that was just Phil's style of play. As I moved on to, of course, playing with Larry Brown the following year, it was more of the ABA style of game because he was the ABA coach, where you pressed full court and you ran off of everything. The only challenge there was playing in Denver is that altitude. I had to get used to that altitude. And then, of course, playing with Gene Shue with the Clippers, we had an impact on the game because he believed in the three-point shot. And then you got to also remember that the NBA didn't believe in that three-point shot. I think it took them 3 or 4 years before they even adopted that shot. So for me, I was lucky that I had a coach like Gene Shue who believed in the three-point shot, and we had designed some plays for that. So playing with San Diego was more like playing in the ABA style, where we dumped the ball down low and move off the low post game I led the league in three-point shot because Gene Shue believed in it, and I had a great passer inside Bill Walton and playing with Swin Nader. They would double team the Swin, and I would just fade to the corner, and he'd pop it to me, and I'd catch and shoot it. And that year, I think, now we're looking at 1979, 80, somewhere around there, I shot more three-pointers than three-quarters of the league.
Yeah.
So the transition into the NBA is that they had to get used to our style rather than us getting used to their style. And we changed the game. We changed the style of the ABA, changed the style of the game more like today's style of the game, whereas one pass and you're shooting three-pointers. That was more of the ABA game, fast breaking it, shooting three-pointers, dunking, playing above the rim. More of an exciting style of play to watch, I think.
That's cool to hear. And then one thing I got to ask you, too, is something that can relate to kind of any player in any time frame that's played any type of professional sport is coming out of high school and then going to the Nets. You still stayed in kind of that hometown area. But once you kind of got to the NBA and the merge happened and you kind of took your talents that way, you went to Kansas City and then like a lot of other teams, San Diego. Can you just talk a little about kind of moving away, kind of playing basketball in like an unfamiliar area, and kind of if that was a challenge for you, kind of a new type of scenery for you?
Yes, going from the Nets to Kansas City was a very difficult transition. But I learned to love Kansas City, even though I was only there for a year. Slower, the people loved the game. I became friends with a lot of Midwestern folks. I learned to really love Kansas City. Even though, coming from New York and you're going to the Midwest, it's slower. Of course, people are different, but they're very, very nice. I love Kansas City, even though I demanded to be traded after my first year in the NBA. Of course, that became a decision I made because of a contract dispute that I was involved in. But that was a transition. And then being traded to Denver the following year, the biggest transition there was getting used to playing in the Mile High City. Just getting my body and my lungs used to it. I thought it would be an advantage, but it took me a long time to get used to it. I mean, when we used to go to Denver, when I played with the Nets and the ABA, it was hard because they would wear you out by the end of the game. Your tongue's hanging out. You don't have any wind. So I thought I would have an advantage playing in Denver, but it took me forever to get that advantage. And by that time, I got into a contract dispute and I was gone. So a transition was more not so much basketball wise, but climate wise. And then my dream as a kid was always to follow in my brother's footsteps and get to the West Coast. I don't know if you guys know, my brother played with the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers for close to 10 years. And my dream was always to play in Golden State close to my brother. And so I didn't get to Golden State, but I got to San Diego, and playing in San Diego was a lot of fun. Played with a lot of great players. Didn't win a lot of games, but we had a lot of fun.
No,
that's great.
So during your 6 years in the NBA, as you mentioned, you played for the Kansas City Kings, Denver Nuggets, and then as a free agent, you chose to play with San Diego Clippers. So what were some of your favorite memories with those teams?
Well, playing with Kansas City Kings, my memories of playing with them and sort of touches my heart right now is that I had great teammates, and we've lost a couple of them. Bill Robinson touches me because he committed suicide, and he was a great teammate of mine. Another great teammate of mine during that first year of the merger, playing with Kansas City, was Big Sam Lacey, the great late Sam Lacey. And I love playing with Sam because he was one of the great all-time big men passers. So it reminded me of playing my playing days at Princeton, where we brought the big man up to the high post, and we did a lot of movement off of that, and enjoyed moving without the ball because I knew that if I was open, that Sam would get me the ball off a nice backdoor cut or something like that. And then also playing with Scott Wedman, a great shooter. He had wind up having some great years with the Boston Celtics after Kansas City. He was great to play with. Became really good friends with Ollie Johnson. And so that team, we had a couple of other ABA guys on that team. Ron Boone was a tremendous, tremendous shooter. The Chief, we never missed a game in his career. Solid. I mean, he became my roommates. And that's a great story I love to share, too, with playing with the Chief, Ron Boone, is that, of course, we were arch rivals. He played with the Utah Stars, and we beat them in the finals for the championship season. And that year, Ron and I got into a fight. Ron didn't like the fact that I was playing tough defense on him, and I really frustrated him. So he punched me with his right hand and knocked out my front teeth. And what happened is that I wound up going to the dentist early in the morning. I think we won our second game, so we were flying out to Utah, up 2-0 in the series. And the next morning, I go to the dentist. I get my teeth fixed, and then we go out to Utah. Ron can't play because he got a gap in his right hand because he got an infection for punching me.
Oh wow!
Punching me in my teeth. So he wound up being more affected than me. And then, of course, we won that series. That was our first championship. And when the merger happened, guess who winds up being in the backcourt with Kansas City?
Oh,
Ron Boone and I wind up being roommates.
Wow.
And so I didn't hold it against him, but I saw how powerful he was. This guy did hundreds of sit-ups every day, sit-ups and push-ups every day. I saw why he never missed a game. He was in unbelievable shape, and so those are some great memories.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Well, those are great memories.
I mean,
those are good.
More than I expected to hear.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is an app that allows podcast producers to record and create original content. It is free to record and create a podcast, giving producers the ability to easily edit their material off their phone or computer. Anchor allows producers and talent to make money off their work with no minimum listenership. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you on platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. To get started, Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. Anchor for Doug and I has been great and allows us to bring unique, creative, and opinionated content to listeners of the Wingspan Podcast.
So, anyways, do you think both San Diego and Kansas City should get their own NBA team again if there was ever an expansion? Where do you think they rank? I mean, obviously, a lot of NBA fans say Seattle, but you having that unique experience with those teams.
If I had to pick which city to build a new franchise, and it would be Seattle. San Diego, I love San Diego. San Diego is more of it's a beach town. Folks don't want to be up in the gym; they want to be on the beach.
Fair enough.
With to develop a team there, the question would they really back a team that's not a really successful team? I don't know. I wouldn't probably put a team in San Diego. Kansas City was a great place to play in. Definitely, I was surprised when they left Kansas City. So Kansas City would be a great place to have another franchise. So not so much San Diego. I'd say Seattle #1, Kansas City #2, and of course San Diego would probably #3.
Well,
that's good.
We'll have to wait and see if and when they ever do an expansion. So, anyways, we're gonna transition a little bit. So, how would you think your game would transition to today's NBA? Because as you mentioned before, the ABA was a lot more fast break, similar-esque to how it is now.
I would fit in. I'd be I'd be a specialist. Even though I brag about being able to play both ends of the court, I would love to play in today's game because I wouldn't have to worry about looking over to the sidelines but for shooting a 3-pointer.
Yeah, 3 and D.
I fit right in, run and gun.
Oh, for sure.
You know what? Sure. Shoot the 3 instead of averaging 3 or 4 3-pointers a game. I might probably be averaging 10 to 12. It would be fun to play in.
So, if you were to have today's NBA comparison, what player do you think your game most resembles?
Yeah, that's people have mentioned that before. They've mentioned Russell Westbrook. I don't think I was that. I never got tired like Russell. I had good vertical. People used to come to watch Dr. J do all the dunks, and they walk away saying, "Who's that little guy dunking like that?" And that was the BT Express. But I would say people have mentioned, Russell Westbrook. It was more of my style. I just like the ever ready battery. Just kept on going. Just kept on going like Russell. I had a wild streak in me. I think I was more of a distributor of the basketball than Russell, even though I love to shoot. There's no doubt about that. But I accepted the role of being a playmaker and someone who was going to get his teammates involved. But I think because of the athleticism, I would say Russell.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's a good comparison. I like that comparison. And then, Brian, you ready to talk some Nets?
Yeah, I love my Nets. I spent a couple years back there a few years ago, and I used to get to the games, and I missed that. So I was so happy for the Nets when they, acquired the two superstars, Durant, and of course my New Jersey guy, Kyrie. And so I'm really, really upset that Durant decided to go there after he played the game and tore his Achilles. I wish he could have gone there this year and it would have been healthy. But you got to be thinking good thoughts about what's going to happen next year. I know Kyrie's having shoulder surgery, so that might set him back. I hope it's not on his shooting arm.
It is on his shooting arm. It's on his right one.
Yeah, well, nowadays with medicine and the procedures they do nowadays, maybe he'll come back being a better shooter. So
No.
I worry a little bit about injuries. They take their toll. And we had mentioned once before that I ended my career, I snapped my Achilles in my 10th year. And of course, it affects your jumping ability. Nowadays, you come back from those injuries. Back in my days, it was the end of my career. But I think taking his time and working hard. My son, he came back from a torn Achilles because they treat it differently than they did back in my day. So I think he'll come back. He won't be dunking as much, but his shooting will probably be just as good, if not better. And if Kyrie can get healthy, that's the team. That's going to be a team to reckon with. And of course, it's exciting. They're going to make the playoffs this year, despite the guys being injured. So one of my favorites is, of course, Spencer Dinwiddie, I remember watching him as an AAU player. My younger son traveled in the circles on the AAU circuit. My younger son is Brendan Taylor, about the same age. And so I'm very, very happy for, his progress as a net player and as an NBA player. And the thing about the Nets is, when I was back there, even though they weren't winning, they have such tremendous fan support. I mean, just going to the arena, the Barclays Center is always happening. And of course, they have those great. I forget what they call them. Those great dining experiences. They used to give us passes to go and have some. I forget the name of the club. There's an unbelievable club they have where the spread, the hors d'oeuvres, and all the other good food is I think I enjoyed that just as much as watching the Nets play. But yeah, I'm really happy that the Nets are up and coming. One of my best buddies of all time is Herb Turetsky, so I send out my best to Herb and to the Nets. Always in my heart. Always in my heart.
That's great. It's glad to see that you still have a connection with the current team. I like to hear that. And then one thing I got to ask you too, you touched on it a little bit. You and Kevin both have a history with Achilles injuries. What advice would you give to Kevin Durant?
Just work your tail off to build that calf. The key is that getting that calf muscle back to, close to being what it was before, and that's hard. And take your time. Really take your time. Make sure you're 100% before you try to come back. Don't rush it. But more than anything, it's the hard work and building the muscles back up that is the key. And don't like I said, don't come back too soon, because if you try to come back too soon, then you're going to be compensating somewhere else who's going to get injured.
Yeah, I like that. I like
Take
that.
time,
That's
more
smart.
than anything, work your tail off to make
Hmm.
it make everything strong.
I like that. And then one thing, a little transition a little bit, something that me and you have both covered in the past, is the Nets G League affiliate, the Long Island Nets. Something that kind of hits more home for you because of the location and the franchise. And
Yeah,
one of their players I know is near and dear to your heart is Devin Cannady, former and still he's at school right now with finishing up his degree at Princeton. How are
yeah.
you liking his play so far? How are you liking his development? Kind of,
Uh,
have you watched him a lot? Kind of just give your overall
yeah,
thoughts on Devin.
I think he's becoming a real NBA type player. I think what's missing in the game is what he has, and that is that shooting ability. That kid can really shoot. So I haven't watched him as much. I've been very, very busy with my projects. Haven't watched him as much as I would like to from the West Coast. But I follow him, I track him down, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm really happy that he's going to get his degree, because long after your NBA career is over, that Princeton network is always there to support you. And that's our connection, is that, we're both Tigers, and we take a lot of pride in that, and, rooting real hard for him. I hope he gets a break someday to be able to wear an NBA uniform. But I think he's made tremendous progress. He's a hard worker, and he will continue to get better. And, I wish him all the success in the world.
Yeah, he's definitely. I was talking to him when they came to Barclays Center in late January, and he's been one of the most consistent guys with Long Island. The one thing that he's done a great job of was kind of embracing his new role. Over the
Yeah.
past recent stretch, he's coming off the bench a lot more. He's accepting that role fully, and the consistency's still there. You see the numbers still average around the same minute markers, and
Yeah.
he's just overall consistent. So that's the main
That's
type of
important.
value. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
important. Consistency. He's not being up and down and accepting your role, which means that he's really matured. And, like I said, I came off the bench early on in my career, and you just sit there and you watch. And when you get the opportunity, you got to be ready. And so that's the exciting thing about him. He's transition coming off the bench, which is good for his, that he knows what they need when he comes into the game, and just being mentally ready to produce.
Yeah, then I guess, Brian, a little fun question to ask is, if the Nets rang your phone and offered you some type of position, whether coaching, assistant, scouting, would you take it? Would you consider it?
Of course. It's a little bit late. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken. I would even do some stuff with them in the community.
Oh, we'd love
You know,
that. We'd love to see
I would
you.
love to do some stuff in the community. And I would, love to do that. I would love to always, what's so interesting about how things work out in your career is that I have two sons who wind up being ball players. My oldest son is still playing in Germany in his 12th year. And I have a younger son who received a basketball scholarship to USC, and he was a fine young player. And they always wondered why I wasn't coaching in the NBA. And it wasn't because I didn't try. The NBA has a program that I participated in years and years ago. It was a coaching program where you get a chance to be assistant coaches at all the pre-draft camps. I was in Chicago several years trying to become an NBA coach, but never got the break to do that. And it sort of passed me by, and I missed that opportunity. But it didn't prevent me from being in the gym. I've coached so many different not only leagues, and I coached girls for I think 4 or 5 years at Harvard Westlake. I was a coach of a Jewish team. They called me an honorary rabbi as the coach.
You're a
It was a
mensch.
funny story. I brought a team from LA into to New York to play in the tournament. And when I was coming in the gym, they were pointing the way. They thought I was a ref. They didn't realize that I was an honorary rabbi and I was the coach of a team called Shelhevet. So I coached a Jewish team. I coached the girls team. I coached the middle school team. I coached. You guys ever hear of slam ball?
Yeah. Oh man, I wish they brought
Ball.
that back.
Uh,
I wish they brought that back. That was
I
I remember
know.
watching that as a kid.
First, which is a slam ball. You name it, I coached it. So it's in my blood. I always loved game. Wish I had the opportunity to coach at that level. Never got the opportunity, but it wasn't because I didn't try to. It's just the breaks of the game.
That's great. And then, Brian, one thing that we talked about in the past, the transition a tiny bit, is kind of the globalization of the whole sport of basketball, not just the NBA and kind of the whole sport in general. But back in your playing day, I guess in the early years, and seeing how the game's evolved in your time, did you ever expect or ever dream for the game of basketball to become so big internationally and worldwide?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, people have asked me after my NBA career did I get the chance to go play in Europe, and I really didn't even think that much of it. Didn't even realize it existed. Of course, I know my late teammate Joe Bryant went and had a great career in Europe for many years after his playing days. My other buddy Bob McAdoo went off and played for a number of years, but they weren't looking for little guys. Back in the day, they just wanted the big guys to play after the NBA career, and then didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I remember my younger brother wound up playing in Sweden, or it was Switzerland, it's not Sweden, Switzerland for a couple of years. But playing international ball was not that popular, not that big of a thing. I never dreamt that would be what it is today. Now I see where they're going to really spend a lot of money in development in Africa. So it's just incredible, and people won't believe when I tell them that my son has been in Germany for 10 years and he's had an unbelievable career, and the capacity, the games. I mean, the interest in the games. I think he said that everywhere they go, it's at least 80-90% capacity. So there's a love of the game, big love of the game in Germany, and he played in Italy for a couple of years. It's big in Italy. It's just really big over there, and I never dreamt it would be to that end. So
yeah, I was actually going to bring up your son, because last time we talked as well, we talked a little about your son. How's your son kind of? I know you touched on it a little bit just then, but how does your son kind of see the international ball playing and kind of like his experiences behind it? And is he like enjoying it? Does he see how everything is like kind of panning out internationally? Is the game growing at all? Does he ever tell you any stories about those type of things?
Well, the stories that we have, it's pretty much not stories, it's more as his goal. He definitely wants to come back and be in management in the NBA. He didn't get a chance to play in the NBA, so his goal and his dream is to be able to manage some way, somehow in the NBA. As a matter of fact, if you guys know anybody with the Nets, he was hoping that he could do some shadowing with the guys during the postseason, when they go to the pre-draft camps. So I'm going to reach out for him to see if he has the opportunity to shadow management during the summertime. He's got another year on his contract, and he wants to play one more year. But he's getting prepared for post career, and he wants to continue to be involved in basketball as in management. But he said that he would also is entertaining the idea of being an international scout. He's seen so many great players. His agent manages a lot of the great players from Europe and the NBA. I think he's got a couple of the guys on the Nuggets, and so the game now is just it's so incredible, vast and wide. The stories that he shares with me is that the difference is that there's not one or two guys. Like you see in the NBA, everyone wants the superstars. They're trying to build up 2 or 3 superstars on the team. It's like in Europe, it's more, if you score, it's more like a balanced attack. Everybody's going to score 10 to 12 points, that type of thing. Starting's not a big deal. Coming off the bench doesn't mean that you're not a great player. They do it differently. I think they structure it more so it's not so much who starts the game, but who's going to be on the court when the game's on the line, who's going to finish on the court. So he says it's more it's different in that facet. It's not superstar oriented, but it's very, very popular everywhere he travels on an international level. The game has increased over the years. He's been in Europe to it being very, very popular sport internationally.
That's great to hear.
It's wonderful, man. Like, I'm glad that, I guess, as one of his role models, what kind of influence and impact you've had on him. So that's amazing. So we have just one more question to ask you. So what are you up to today, and do you have anything special coming up?
Well, when I'm up today and I'm getting ready to come back, like I mentioned a little bit, I'm very, very excited about being able to spend some time. Happy that Princeton will probably be in the championship vying for a Ivy League championship in Harvard in middle of March. That weekend, the second weekend in March, I'll be on the East Coast and hanging out with the Tigers groups, and I'm doing a couple speaking engagements. So I'm very, very excited about that. And it's Who is Brian Taylor is the title of my presentations. People really don't know who I am.
Well, we can answer a lot of that today.
And so I'll be doing some speaking engagements, traveling a little bit after I go into the Ivy League Hall of Fame. I will be meeting and greeting with several different Princeton clubs around the country and sharing my story. And hopefully it's a motivational story that a kid can make it from the projects to Princeton to the pros.
That's a great story.
Have a life after where you give back. So what I'm doing now is I'm working with disconnected youth, helping them prepare for and explore opportunities in education and in careers. And these are the kids that are dealing with trauma, kids who are involved in the juvenile justice system, kids who are foster children, and trying to mentor them and help and prepare them for a life after the challenges of growing up with all the trauma that they have to deal with. So that's an exciting way to give back to society, and I'm happy that I'm involved with that.
That's great to hear. I'm glad that you're doing stuff, and I'm glad to see that everything's going well with you. And yeah, I wish you all the best in the future. But hey, thanks again for joining us, Brian. I really appreciate
Chris,
it. I bet Doug
thank
really
you guys
appreciates
so much.
it.
I miss you guys on the East Coast. Looking forward to meeting you guys when I get back there for some time, okay?
Of course.
Hope so.
And keep up great work. Much success on your podcast.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it a lot.
Guys, hey, give Doug, not Doug, I know, give Doug a hug, Chris, but also
you got it.
Give my man, my Princeton fellow Princeton Tiger a hug when you see him.
You got it. I see him Monday. I see him tomorrow, actually, so I'll see him then.
Hey, give him a hug for me, all right?
You got it.
All right, guys. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
You too. Enjoy the weather.
Chris, time to give the closing remarks.
Yep. Guys, remember to feel free to email over any suggestions, questions, comments, or thoughts on any of our content by sending an email to wingspanpodcast@gmail.com. And do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening service. As for next time, stay classy and take care.
Yay!